Welcome to the Earn More, Stress Less podcast with me, Caro Syson, and my co-host for this season 2, Hayley Hudson. This podcast is for self-employed business owners just like you who really want to grow their business and become successful and profitable and without all the stress and hassle. We want to share over 50 years of our business experience to show you how simple it can be to earn more money and how you can get organised without needing a business degree or any other qualification. We'll be talking about the easy steps that you can put in place right now to start earning more money today and to help you get the business that you deserve and dream of. So without further ado, let's get started. This week's podcast is sponsored by Pocket PA, helping self-employed business owners to get organised, understand their finances and do their accounts all in one place using a powerful online tool. If you're serious about making a profit and having a successful business, then using a simple digital app like Pocket PA is the best way to grow and scale your business. Visit pocketpa.com for more details and start managing your money like a pro today. Hello and welcome to the Earn More, Stress Less podcast with me, Caro Syson, and my lovely co-host, Hayley Hudson.
Hello.
So in today's episode, we're going to be diving into the really important topic of setting your boundaries, dealing with tricky clients, and talking about your terms and conditions. Now, as a solo business owner and entrepreneur, it's likely that we're not going to have staff to delegate to. So it's really important, it's essential, in fact, that we have robust terms and conditions to protect our business and minimise any aggravation and friction. So today we're going to talk about why, when and how we create our customised terms and conditions tailored to our own unique business needs, along with some practical strategies for communicating them effectively to our wonderful customers. And we're also going to discuss a little bit on how to handle our challenging clients' interactions with the utmost professionalism, of course, diplomacy wherever possible, to ensure that you have a positive outcome and you can maintain positive client relationships. So the first thing I wanted to touch on, hi Hayley, how are you? Sorry, that was a very quick hello and overview of our podcast today. Are you good?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, very well, ready to go.
Right, well, let's dive in. So I wanted to talk about why our terms and conditions are so important, because effectively they are our boundaries. They're our structure for what we will and won't put up with. And it's our framework really for how we're operating our business. And I know people, when they're all excited about getting started on their business, they often aren't thinking of like perhaps what they deem the boring bits, the terms and conditions, the legal part, but they are really important because they are going to be needed when you promote your business. People will want to look at your terms and conditions. You need to have them in place to protect your business and to minimize any potential conflicts. So you need to outline your services. You need to establish your payment terms. You need to address your liability, your dispute resolution if something were to go wrong. And I think by doing that, you're managing your clients' expectations as well. How do you handle terms and conditions, Hayley? Have you always had them in place right from the get-go?
Well, yes, I've always worked with a framework. I'm quite structured with that sort of thing, in my mind. It might have taken me a while to put them down on paper, but I've been in business a long time. So I suppose there's a lot more emphasis on that now in recent years, going back 20 plus years. It wasn't such a big deal then. I feel really nervous saying that, but it wasn't. Nowadays business is a lot more serious, I think. Dare I even say that? I mean, business was always serious, but I just feel like nowadays with all the new legislations, the laws, things have really gotten tightened up. When I started, skin testing wasn't even something that we had to do. Although I must say, I have always, since I've been a solopreneur, always insisted on freelancing and created my own policies, which I think set me apart from a lot of the competition because, as I've said back then, a lot of people weren't doing that. So I was prepared if somebody hadn't had a skin test, for example. I mean, I'm using that as an example. That I actually wouldn't do their hair. And there was very few hairdressers at the time who would stick to that. So in answer to your question, yes, I think I've always had quite stronger boundaries and policies in place, even when they weren't required. I think the main thing to think about with policies and terms and conditions is it's really just a framework to stick to protect you and to protect your clients. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about it too much and just have something in place Even if it's just something simple like, if somebody's going to cancel, how long, how much notice, how many days, how many hours do you require for that notice period before you're happy to, charge them a booking fee or charge them a cancellation fee? Putting that framework down is just so important because your clients then know what to be expected. You can't just turn around and say, well, you've cancelled on the day, you owe me 50% if it doesn't say it anywhere. You just can't do that. You've got to have it in place.
Yeah, I agree. And it's about not cutting corners. So it is actually illegal to copy and paste someone else's terms and conditions. So if you just get started and you just think, oh, so and so down the road is doing the same as me, I'm just going to copy their terms and conditions and just put them on my website or into my social media or whatever, that actually is illegal and you aren't supposed to do that. So I think it's important that you have a look and see how you're going to have your own terms and conditions. You can have a look in online Facebook groups, perhaps in forums. And there are lots of places where you can go and you can get a template, either a free one, a download if you do know what you're doing, or you can buy a template that you can customize when you get started. But it's important that you actually put your stamp on it, that you have, I've seen terms and conditions for a business where they haven't even got their own business name in it because they have copied and pasted and they just think, oh, it's going to be okay. But actually, they need to pay attention to the small detail. And if you are, growing your business and you do have some spare budget, I do think it's great to join some legal forums where a lot of the legal eagles and the solicitors. I've got a previous podcast where I spoke with Joanne Fisher, and she's a legal expert, a solicitor, and she has a great value legal group where a lot of small business owners are in it. And she has templates which people can use, and she does Q&As where people can ask specific questions to enable them to customize their template with some legal background and advice in place. But I think it's important that you draft your terms and conditions, you have a look at them, you make sure that you're complying with the applicable laws and regulations. I know you have something that you have in your business, Hayley, that you share with people. Do you want to just let our listeners know what you have to offer?
Yes, we have a business bundle template that you can go into. My website and you can find that information. So if you're wanting a starting point, it just covers things very simply, like how somebody can cancel with you, for example. What time frame do you accept cancellations over social media? Is it just by text? Is it just by phone? Just stipulating all those little things. So if you're really struggling of knowing where to start, it can just give you a really good starting point. And like I say, you can use the template outline. It shows you what I do and what I've used in my business, and then you can go and pop your own spin on it, put your own business name in and what your specific hours are, and for the different services that you offer. But it just gives you that really nice, I suppose it takes the mystery out of it, because I know with a lot of hair and beauty professionals, the minute we mention legals, terms and conditions, a lot of our heads just explode and it just seems very, very intimidating. And it really doesn't have to be like that. I think the purpose of my mentoring is to break business down very easily into bite-sized pieces. And, business isn't something that's difficult. It's just step by step, doing things step by step, small little movements forward towards your goals. And this terms and conditions and doing your policies, it will make you feel so much more confident with setting boundaries in your business if you've got your terms and conditions and your policies visible to clients, because you can refer back to them, whether it be a complaint or a tricky client, or keeping somebody's booking fee. If you can say, well, actually these terms and conditions, you've agreed to them, or in the messages or on the website, then it gives you a much more solid standing.
Well, that was easy. I don't even need to refer them off to another Facebook group because you've got it there. So make sure you put those details in the show notes, Hayley, because I think people will be able to go directly to you to be able to look at your template. So, well, that was easy. Okay, so I think the next thing that we need to talk about, once you've got your terms and conditions clearly written down, I think it's important that at the outset of your client relationship in your business, that you make sure that your clients are signposted and they know where they can see your terms and conditions. And when they're making any bookings, particularly if they're booking online and they haven't spoken to you first, that in order for them to book, they have confirmed that they are going to recognize your terms and conditions and they accept them. So it's always great to have that tick box in an online booking process, which we have in Pocket PA, by them confirming the booking, they're agreeing to your terms and conditions. And I think it's important that you have them transparently showing somewhere, whether that's on your social media pages, perhaps in your highlights, put them on your stories every so often, redirect clients to see them, or if you've got a website, put them on there. But I think it's important that you make sure clients can find them easily, and you communicate that you do have terms and conditions that you work to. So also you could put them on a reminder message if you're sending out email booking confirmations or reminders ahead of time. Just have a link that diverts clients to them if they're wanting to check. Sometimes it's not until clients are about to cancel or they've had a missed appointment with you and they're scratching around then looking for your terms and conditions to see if you've clearly outlined what the situation is when they don't turn up for an appointment. So it's important that you have them in a place that's easily accessible for your clients. What do you do regards consultation forms and documenting client journeys, Hayley? Do you have a process in that? I'm sure that you do have one.
Yes, I do have one. I'm really big on consultation forms. So in addition to your terms and conditions, I like to have a form for a lot of things. So the biggest thing that I was finding in business is managing expectations. That can be quite difficult, especially since the world of Instagram and Pinterest has become a thing. When somebody's coming in and they're so pleased with this inspiration picture and it's absolutely not achievable in one session, probably not even in five, what the hell do you do with these people? Because I was finding that they weren't taking no for an answer. And even if you've gone through the whole consultation and said to them, this isn't going to happen, it's certainly not going to happen this visit. You get to the end of the service and they were still saying, well, why doesn't it look like the picture? And it's like, well, because we discussed that already. So I know, especially for younger stylists or people who are less experienced, although having said that, it can still catch you out if you've been doing it a long while, especially if you're not very good at upholding your boundaries. You can look at your specifics in the language that you're using. So to lead into the consultation form. So when you're doing a consultation, I'll just quickly walk you through it. If a client is saying things about their hair, so especially with colour, we have a form that we use during consultation where we flag up any problems and how we'll combat those. So you can get the client to sign that so they agree and they document that they understand what the problems are going to be. This is really, really useful when you're managing unreasonable expectations. I'm pretty unshakable, but if a client wants something that's really unachievable, I'm a really big fan of the word no. I always recommend an alternative and then I document everything so that if they do kick back at the end of the service and they're not happy with what you've suggested and what you've done at the end of the service, then you can refer back to it and say, well, I told you no, and we've documented that on this form. I especially found that was tricky when I did get a team. I know a lot of our listeners don't have a team, but if you're thinking about having a team, it is really, really important. I would say consultation forms are essential because then at least you can see what was happening during the consultation if you weren't present. So when you're dealing with a complaint, you can visit it later on. So that's what I would say about that.
I think it's important in any event, if you are a solo practitioner, certainly in Pocket PA, for every appointment that goes into your digital online diary, there is a notes section. So if you are seeing a client and there is something that you want to document and have an audit trail really of things that might not have gone completely according to plan during the appointment when you've delivered your service, it's a great place to just put a couple of notes and just have that history to be able to look back on and just be able to see, gosh, they were quite difficult then. They were 10 minutes late arriving. And you've got those sort of markers and those evidence points so that if you do decide to dispense with the client, you can either go back and, rely on the notes that you've made, or you can actually set the record straight if they're suggesting that something isn't as you're outlining in your sort of journey of things breaking down between you. But I think that sort of brings us on to the next point of sort of tricky clients and how we deal with them professionally, because I know that that's an icky thing for any of us. None of us like confrontation readily. We don't like to get into arguments. And I think when there's money involved and it's your business and your reputation, particularly as a solo business owner, you're very invested in your business. Your business is you are your business. And you can take things, quite personally, and it can seem, like a very big deal when a client challenges you, and you really need to be relying on your terms and conditions at that point. They are there to protect you. They are your boundary. They're your sort of your moat and your drawbridge to be able to rely on those things and to protect yourself. So what are your tips for handling tricky clients? I know for me, active listening is a really important one, and being able to rely on either paperwork or audit trails, consultation forms, as you say, to be able to refer back to establish your points. But I think active listening is one of those things where you're very calmly listening to the client. You're giving them every opportunity to express their concerns and complaints without interrupting. You're showing that you're giving them plenty of time to be able to air their grievance. Often people, when they're confronting you, they just want to feel heard. And I think it's important that we give them that opportunity to speak, to feel heard and understood, perhaps repeat back their concerns to show that you've understood their perspective. And then that enables them to feel that they've got everything off of their chest. They've communicated all the bits that they were feeling disgruntled about. And then it enables you to sort of reflect back on what the situation is and to be able to maybe put your point of view across and find a solution that satisfies both parties. But I think if you've got those clear boundaries at the get-go, at the beginning of your client relationship in work, I think you can rely on those. If the client is saying something completely left field that doesn't align with what you believe and how you believe that you've delivered your service, I think it's important that you can stand your ground and you don't have to necessarily agree. You have two different points of view, and there's their version, your version, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And as the business owner, you have to make the final decision on whether you're going to resolve something financially or whether you're going to decide to cut your losses and actually move on. But I think active listening and setting clear boundaries, those two strategies can really help in handling difficult or challenging client situations. It's important that you're professional. It's important that you don't have a standing row. You don't want to be having a blazing row in the middle of your salon or your workspace or whatever. And I think you need to protect your business reputation. It is okay for you to have different points of views and not to agree with all of your clients. You don't want to be bullied into submission and to feel that heavy heart every time that client is seeing you and that you're like putty in their hands. This is your business and you need to decide which clients you have. Hayley, what sort of clients do you recall having to handle diplomatically? Spill the tea.
Gosh, I'm not sure I dare even spill the tea on some of them, to be totally honest with you. Oh, well, I'm actually very good at complaints handling. So I've always been the one that's been drafted in at any salon that I've ever worked at. I was thrown in the deep end from a very young age as a stylist to deal with complaints. I actually remember working for a lady, and this has just sprung to mind. Basically, she completely butchered this client. She chopped a bob in this lady's hair, and it was very, 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 very thick hair. This was not my salon. Can I just say, this is not my salon. It was an old boss. And she did this bob, and it was so short at the back. To be fair, it was exactly what the client had asked for. In her defense, it was exactly what the client had asked for. She should have had a consultation form, so she could have referred back to that. Anyway, this lady came back demanding hair extensions, and her hair was far too short for hair extensions. And basically, my boss darted in the back, shoved me out to the front. I think I was only 21 or something, and I was just like, no, and had to deal with it. Oh, yeah. Anyway.
Oh, my God. What did you say?
I just very calmly sat down with her and explained, that, and how to style it and what products to use. And that I knew that she was very upset about it. But unfortunately, with it being cut so close into the nape of the neck, that it just couldn't have extensions. You couldn't physically get them in. Oh yeah, I can't remember, but she lived okay. I mean, she obviously wasn't happy because we didn't have a magic wand to stick it back on, but ultimately she had got what she'd asked for. So I calmed her down and listened, and I think I was doing some training on this actually the other day. So I was delivering some training with two ladies who work in the hair industry, and we were going through how to deal with complaints, and the immediate reaction from people is to get their backs up. So if someone comes in to complain, they're usually on the defensive straight away, dismissive and defensive, I find, because we're emotionally attached to what it is that we've given with that service, with the haircut, with whatever it's, especially if it's quite a creative service that you've given. It's like somebody saying your artwork is rubbish. It's really hurtful. And the thing is, you have to take your own ego out of it. You have to step out of that mindset. And they had a light bulb moment when I literally said to them, look, if a client is complaining, it's just them telling you that they like you and they want to continue working with you and they want to maintain a relationship with you. And they were like, boom, the lights just went on. And I said, look, if they didn't want to, they'd go everywhere else and tell everybody else. Nobody tells anybody about a good haircut, do they? They tell everybody about the bad one, and just use that as your starting point. Try and take the emotion out of it. Just be concerned, talk to them, like you're saying with the active listening, listen to them and try and come to some sort of resolution. They're not always gonna, they just don't necessarily always just want their money back or want to attack you. They're just desperate. They don't know what to do with it. They don't like it. Sometimes it might be teaching them how to style it, or it might be, let's use a certain product, or okay, it's a little bit short, I'm really sorry about that, or the color might not be right, or whatever. But usually going back to the consultation, addressing their needs. Often it's about them as well. It's not always about you. It might be that they're not very confident. So the hair could be beautiful. It could be technically fantastic and executed really, really well. I find this one's quite a tricky one, actually, because sometimes they don't love themselves, and that's a bit deep. Complaints handling is deep. Sometimes it's about them and their insecurities and their confidence. The hair could be fantastic, but if they can't deal with the change, or they might have gone home and their partner might have said, oh, I don't know what I think about that on you, or that doesn't suit you. I once had a lady, I could go on about this forever, sorry, I'll tell you one more anecdote, one more tale, and then I'll stop. I did this one lady's hair and it was stunning. It knocked 15 years off her. She looked fabulous. She went home. Her husband told her it was awful. She came back in and she made me do it again. Something that was, not as attractive, because he didn't want other people to look at her. I know that's completely off topic, but these are the sort of things that people don't realise they're at the base of complaints sometimes. But you do also get the hair hoppers that are just going from salon to salon to salon trying to get a discount. So you have to try and work out which person you're dealing with and deal with that accordingly. It can be very tricky.
Yeah. And do you think to avoid a complaint, you need to stand your ground sometimes and just sort of be firm?
Absolutely. You do need to stand your ground. So we have complaint forms in the salon. Like I said, I have lots of systems, processes. Of course, I have a form for complaints. And I think sometimes by them filling out a form, that buys you a little bit of time. It gets them to calm down and actually see objectively what they're not happy with, so that then you can understand what they're actually not unhappy with. That they're unhappy with. Because sometimes they'll say, it's a little bit too dark. And then all of a sudden, it's too dark. The water was too hot. The coffee was cold. You looked at me funny. The door didn't open properly, and it was snowball into a catalogue of events that they weren't happy with. But actually, it might just be that you've had to go a little bit darker with the toner because they're going on holiday next week. But if you haven't addressed that properly and they haven't understood it and they're not listening and they're not expecting it, because the main thing is, well, you've got to understand with complaints and clients, they do not understand the service. It is your job to communicate well enough so that they feel confident that they are sure what you're going to do. So if you've just assumed and presumed that they know that you need to go a little bit darker because they've told you they're going on holiday next week, they don't know that. Your clients do not understand what needs to be done to get them the outcome that they want to achieve. So it's your job to explain that. So if you're not very good at communicating, or you need to improve your communication skills, you could end up with quite a lot of complaints.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. I can't overemphasize enough. You need to be reinforcing and actually implementing your terms and conditions consistently and fairly across the board with all of your clients. That will enable you to sort of uphold your business integrity and prevent potential conflicts. Because if you're allowing one client to get away with arriving consistently late and another person is penalized when they're sort of a minute or two over the time, etc., you're not enforcing things in the same way when you're not sticking to the boundaries in your own terms and conditions. And prevention is always better than cure. So make sure you're putting systems and processes in place to proactively make sure that you're minimizing any conflict in your business. So we talked previously on episodes about putting in automated appointment reminders, booking confirmations. Make sure that you've got an audit trail that you can rely on to make sure that the client has clearly been shown what time the appointment is, what service they were going to be getting at the appointment. And when clients are overdue for payments, that sort of thing. Have a system in place to be able to collect the money. Perhaps, in Pocket PA, we've got an invoicing system which has got a clickable link to let the clients make an easy payment. You need to be thinking about how to combat and manage things to minimize the conflict and the flashpoints in your business. Anything else that you can think of, Hayley, that we can suggest to our listeners today?
I think try and get a pretend member of staff, I would say. So by that, what I mean is have a pretend member.
Pretend member.
Yeah, pretend one. So it's like your alter ego. So if you've got a client that's, I don't know, asking you questions, or you've got to chase up payments, you can have Angela in accounts or something like that, so that it is you, but you can have a different tone when dealing with them.
Billing.
Yeah, if you can't afford another member of staff, have a pretend one, so that when you're standing your ground and being a bit hard, it doesn't create a problem when they're next in for their appointment, and it doesn't feel awkward, because a lot of us do feel really difficult, especially when you know somebody very well and they might have been a client for a long time. If you've got to enforce a policy, it's quite nice to be able to say, oh, well, I'm really sorry, Angie in accounts, yeah, she can be a little bit direct.
Yeah, I've certainly heard other people saying that they implement that, and it does work wonders. So that's quite a lot of things that we've covered. It sounded quite boring at the beginning, talking about your terms and conditions, but we've managed to zhuzh it up a bit with some juicy client stories and tricky clients. So thanks for sharing those, Hayley. That was a real nugget. But anyway, we've really sort of tackled the topic of boundary setting again. We've reminded you, hopefully, how important it is to set your boundaries, and you can do that with your terms and conditions. It's the perfect opportunity for you to communicate them to your clients and protect your business and yourself. And also, we've talked about how to manage tricky clients like a pro. So join us next time for more tips and strategies on helping you to earn more and stress less. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode with Hayley and I. We will catch up with you again next week, and have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you so much for listening today to the Earn More, Stress Less podcast with me, Caro Syson, and my co-host, Hayley Hudson. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then do hit subscribe so we can catch up again soon. And please kindly leave a review if you've got a moment, and share with anyone else that you think this podcast could help on their self-employed journey. If you're ready to make bigger breakthroughs in your business life and want to get way more organised and understand your finances the really simple way, then start your very own 14-day free trial today using the super powerful software tool Pocket PA that I made for my own son and daughter. Go to pocketpa.com/podcast and let's get you on the way to earning more money and stressing much less. Have a great week, whatever you're doing.